Australians have been told that if we want to understand the voice proposal, we should read the 272-page final report to the Australian Government Indigenous Voice co-design process. The incomprehensible report focuses on how the 24 national voice members will be selected to the exclusion of white Australia. What little can be understood in the report is the Australian Indigenous Voice proposal, and how its 24 national voice members will be selected, but even that's not clear. The proposal aims to create a representative body for Indigenous communities in Australia. However, there are questions if the selection process will be genuinely democratic, or if it will allow powerful individuals and factions within Indigenous communities to control the process for their own benefit. The latter appears to be the case, as Aboriginals are family clannish. Whomever captures the voice controls Australia, as everything that happens in Australia will be deemed to involve and affect Aboriginals, who hold voice veto over every single initiative or decision by governments and their bureaucracies. The structure of the voice involves dividing Australia into 35 local and regional districts, but the specifics of how these districts will be constituted and populated are yet to be determined. Each district will have the flexibility to decide on its own structure and leadership, leading to potential variations in standards and behaviour for local voice members. The national voice, sitting above the 35 districts, will have 24 members allocated based on a state, territory and Torres Strait Islander basis. However, the selection process for these members is also yet to be determined. In other words, it's unknown. Pass the voice and then we find out. They've got to be kidding. The report offers 3 possible alternative selection options, with the default being that local and regional voices collectively determine the national voice members for their respective areas. In other words, they make it up when and as they choose. One major observation is the significant numerical imbalance between states/territories, with smaller regions having a disproportionate sway in the national voice. This has raised concerns about the lack of effective representation for certain Indigenous communities. It's a gerrymander. Boundaries and not population numbers will determine representation. In fact, 18% of Australia's Aboriginal population, of just under 1 million Aboriginals, could control the majority of the 35 voice districts. That's less than 180,000 people, the equivalent of 3 capital city municipalities. The report does not clarify whether Indigenous people will have an entitlement to vote directly for their voice representatives, and discussions about potential elections seem to raise objections in the report. In other words, individual voting is not favoured. The structure of the national voice itself could potentially concentrate power in the hands of a few individuals, particularly the 2 co-chairs of which wokeism applies. One chairperson must be male and the other is to be female, but not biologically so. 2 men could occupy the chairs, with one masquerading as a woman. The 2 chairs will essentially run the voice. This will be the greatest unelected concentration of power in Australia. Overall, there are doubts about how genuinely representative the voice will be, and whether it will serve as a tool for the concentration of power for specific factions within Indigenous communities. The report lacks specific details about the selection process, leaving many questions unanswered. One thing is for certain: the voice is opaque. It will not be democratically elected, and less than 180,000 people can control Australia, determining the well-being of some 25 million Australians, and the 2 co-chairs hold such immense power that they can constitutionally overrule the Australian Prime Minister and the Cabinet. The 2 chairs are King and Queen of Australia. 235 years of white government that's provided immense prosperity is at risk. The 2 chairs are effectively King and Queen of Australia if the 35 regions can be kept divided, which isn't hard to do with clannish Aboriginals who favour family grouping loyalties rather than national unity. Australia was never a nation under Aboriginals. They had no maps or knew the size or shape of Australia or its location in the world, let alone how many people were in Australia or their location. The Stone Age awaits Australia, but rest assured that Australia's neighbours, China or India, will step in with a flood of people to restore order and dominate the nation in their image. They'll have no interest in the voice or a small minority of Aboriginals that handed them an atomised and divided Australia as a prize. The voice is going to be a fuck-up. Australia will be ungovernable. Should hapless Australia adopt the voice, they'll be eternally sorry. There's nothing in it for them.